neglected and would like to stand up so we can welcome you. Okay, please welcome everybody. So tonight we have a great speaker and a wise woman. Her name is Dr. Susan Stone, and she'll be speaking on mindfulness and inspiration. For those who don't know Dr. Stone, she has practiced mindfulness meditation for over 25 years, and she has lived in Zen and Theravadan monasteries and is an ordained Zen lay priest. She's the author of 2 books, including At the 11th Hour, about mindfulness and caregiving, and articles on mindfulness. She's a graduate of the Community Dharma Leader Program at Spirit Rock Meditation Center in California, and she also co-leads the Inside Meditation community of Charlottesville, and she teaches mindfulness-based stress reduction at the University of Virginia, where she's a faculty member. Furthermore, she teaches mindfulness at middle school in Charlottesville, has taught in men's and women's prisons, and she leads retreat in the multi-state area. And she also comes here every year, hopefully, and does a program, and very well attended, and we love her coming here because she's so wise and insightful, and she'll probably speak about compassion, continue what Swamiji was speaking on compassion. So please join hands and welcome Dr. Susan Stone.
Wonderful welcome. I hope the talk is going to prove as wonderful. I have to get this attached, I think. How does that? Does it work? Can you hear it? Good. Okay. So the first thing I need to say is, actually I'm not going to be talking about mindfulness and inspiration. I was asked to submit the topic for my talk a few months ago, and I usually don't decide on what I'm going to talk about until pretty close to the time. So it's not going to be mindfulness and inspiration. I decided I hope you're going to be inspired by what I'm talking about. So I decided to talk tonight about something, or put it in a way I haven't said it before. And so we're going to see how this goes. I do come from a Buddhist tradition, and so what I'm going to say, in a way, is a product of that. And yet I am tonight going to try to step back from, it's not about the Buddhist tradition. What I'd like to talk about is the inner spiritual path, and to see it using the image of a bus ride. I understand or think we can talk about the spiritual path, and I hope this is going to, or feel it applies to all of us who are on an inner spiritual path. And I'm encouraged. I sat there looking, oh, good, multi-faith chants. Yes, I think I can do this. So here we are. The inner spiritual path as a bus ride. And I think that this is a ride that starts where? In your heart. I think each of us get onto this ride because somehow or another it starts in your heart. But there's no telling for any one of us how far you are going to go. You can't buy a ticket for this bus ride because maybe you're going to go to Scottsville, maybe to Charlottesville, Richmond, DC, or maybe all the way. All the way. Now that's a big one. What is all the way? What came to my mind thinking about that was T.S. Eliot's phrase, when he spoke about it as a condition of complete simplicity, costing not less than everything. A condition of complete simplicity costing not less than everything. And I think for a lot of people, you say, oh, everything? You know, who wants to pay everything? And you begin to think, you know, my family, my home, my possessions, my career. It sounds very unappealing, everything, to have to give that up. So first of all, from my experience, and all of this is just my view on it, I'd like to say it doesn't involve giving up your home. You don't have to go live in a cave. Everything doesn't mean that. Moreover, how far you go on this ride is completely up to you at the beginning stages. You know, you're not going to be hijacked, at least not in the beginning stage. You can always decide you're going to get off the bus at the beginning stages. I think there are two reasons why we get on the bus to begin with. And the first reason is that we are, I think, pushed. We're pushed by the pain that's we're experiencing in life. It's just the pain that we feel in life. We want and we need to search. We need to search for something. And those of us who are, maybe I'll say fortunate or have good karma, or however you want to express it, we find a spiritual path. I'm not talking about any one particular. It might be Buddhist, it might be your spiritual path with the Guru Dev, any one of those, but I am talking about the inner spiritual path, an inner journey. If we're lucky, that's what we find. I think also that there is a second reason, the first being because of the pain that we experience, and the second, I think, is because of our heart. The hurt and the heart. And I think the second reason is because our heart yearns. I think many of us have felt that. There's a deep yearning in the heart, and we don't really even necessarily know what it's for, but we can be pretty sure that life as it is not the whole thing. There's more to the story. In the Buddhist tradition, I've heard it called the nirvana instinct, that we kind of, something that we're born with, that there's just this sense that there's something out there. I've also heard it called a hole in life. There's something missing. There's something missing, and we're looking to find it. So for those two reasons, I think we're both pushed or pulled, one more than the other, or maybe a mix of both. But that's why we get on the bus to begin with in the first place. And then I think we need to recognize that this bus ride can be a very bumpy ride. You know, the bus ride can be really bumpy. As any bus ride, in fact, is literally. You know, you can go through very smooth periods, and then all of a sudden there are a lot of bumps. And also the people that you're riding with might be people that you don't quite get along with. You know, like, oh dear, here we are on this ride, and you don't like some of these other passengers along with you, maybe. So it really is like a bus ride. And at the same time, it's our choice whether we stay on or not. You know, I co-lead the Insight Meditation community at Charlottesville. It's an insight meditation from the Buddhist tradition. And I will say that very, very often, I will meet people in town, and they will tell me, oh, they're not coming anymore. We meet on Tuesday nights, for one thing, regularly. They're not coming anymore because the practice just wasn't doing it for them, and they've taken up something else, like, as I mentioned, contra dancing or walking in the woods, something else that is meaningful for them. And that's just fine if that's the way they want it, if they're not coming anymore. I meet other people who stop coming because in the first place they began coming because of the pain that they're experiencing in life. Maybe a divorce, a relationship that is broken up, losing a job. And then all of a sudden, after time, maybe they get the new job or a new relationship. And so the external pain is gone. And oh, I don't need to come anymore. They were satisfied. That was enough for them. And you know what? Just because they're not coming on Tuesday night, does that mean they're off the path? That they're off the bus ride? No, not necessarily. Who's to say they're not necessarily off the ride if you're not coming regularly there or anywhere else. I think the key to being on this bus ride are a few things. Number one is that yearning in the heart. If your heart still yearns, even if you're not sure what it's yearning for, then you're still on the ride. Still on the ride. And a listening to the heart and allowing it to lead you or pull you into aligning your life. Aligning your life with what you know at the time as the deepest truths. You're still on the ride. It doesn't mean that you've gotten the whole way. However slowly you're going, you're still on the ride. But, or I should say and, there are lots of skillful practices. In our workshop that we're doing right now, we're talking about compassion and mindfulness. Many others, and you do them here. Cultivating faith, service, many, many others in different traditions. Who's to say what is better? Each person finds what works for them. That's staying on the bus, staying on the bus. At the same time, it is easy, I have found, for us to think, oh, all I need to do is to experience bliss. I used to think this when I first started on this. I thought it was going to be wall-to-wall bliss. I mean, that's what I wanted. That was what I was going for. It was wall-to-wall bliss. And then I realized, and I have to tell you, the Buddhist tradition kind of hits you over the head with, that's not it. It's not going to be wall-to-wall bliss, and that's probably not what you're going to find anyway. There can be bliss, but it's not like you're trying to build up greater and longer periods of it. So that was one thing that I learned, because actually bliss, even when you experience it, when you come back to your everyday life, what do you find? Same old problems, right? Same old problems are there. The bliss doesn't necessarily erase all the problems. So that was one element. Oh, okay, that's a misunderstanding I had, and I think a lot of people have. There's another kind of misunderstanding. And that is, and I'll say a lot of people in the Buddhist tradition have this, like, oh, all I have to do is get skillful enough at my interpersonal relations. I'm going to get skillful. I'm going to learn how to deal with people very well. I'm going to be, yes, compassionate in a more narrow sense than what Gurudev was talking about. I'm going to be compassionate. I'm going to really get good at this. And someday I'll be so good at it that I'll be there. I'll have reached it. And that isn't it either. It's important. It is important, really, to work at the interpersonal relations. You can't bypass them. That's something really important that we find out. You know what? You just can't bypass them. But it isn't the whole thing. You have to go through, you need to go through your issues and not go around them. We're talking about that in our workshop right now. You need to go through your issues and not around them. But all of these things that I've been talking about so far are really the first stages of the journey. Now, I think that's maybe a shocking statement if you stop to think about it. Some people have been working for years, and I know certainly in the Buddhist tradition, a lot of people work for years on, and this is so radical what I'm saying, they can be working for years on the interpersonal relations, and it's important. But I say it is still the first stage of the journey, because as long as you envision your life as coming from a me, a self, that life is all about improving myself. That's important, please understand. I'm not saying it's not. But as long as your life is all about getting better and having a better self, doing even good works, that's fine, that's wonderful, but that's still the early stages. You could say that the early stages is all about life according to my personal narrative. And to your personal narrative, are seeing that a lot of people, everybody's running around with their personal narratives. It's a world of me's and you's out theirs. That means it's a world of separation, isn't it? It's a world of a lot of competition. It's a world of alienation. And it can't help but be that, as long as you, it doesn't matter how often you think, we're all one. In fact, you're living it, and you can't help but live it as long as you're living solely from the sense of a personal me. That's just the way it is. That's the way things work. So that's why I call it the early stage. At the later stage, at some point, something happens. A shift happens. And what that shift is there's suddenly a recognition will happen in which you realize, you know what? This isn't about me. It's a shift in awareness, and words can't really be put to it. A lot of words can be put to it, yes, but words don't do it. There is a shift in awareness, and it can happen. And I will say that a lot of people find, again, that this is a fairly radical statement. I was talking to a friend not too long ago, and she said, you know what, we were talking just this about the shift, and she said, you know what, she said, if you had said this, if I heard those words just a few years ago when she was going through a really hard time, she said, it would have been like a slap in the face. She said, I was going through such a hard time. That was my whole world. I was dealing with those issues. That was my whole world. Those words would have put a barrier between you and me, she said. However, she said, because my pain was so intense, she said, it pushed me. And she didn't say into the shift, but I'm using the words now. I am saying, she realized something. Whoa, it's not about me. It's not personal. She knows it now. It is a later stage of the spiritual journey. 2 stages. First one, the world according to me. The second one, in which there is an understanding, oh, it's not it is simply an isness. It is there. It's just there. And it is a stunning change, a stunning shift. So I debated, and then I decided, okay, well, I'll tell you just a little bit about my experience with this. And that is, it happened when I was in my early 20s. And I had been a philosophy major. It was my senior year at university. And you know what? I could tell you all about Kant and Aristotle and Plato and all of the Western philosophers. We didn't study Eastern. Western philosophers. And all of a sudden, I won't even say all of a sudden, I won't go into all the details, but the shift happened on one stunning night that shifted my life forever. I didn't ask for it. I didn't know it was coming. I had no idea about it. I had kind of heard about it somewhere. But it did happen, and I was horrified. Like, wait a minute, that's not the way it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be bliss, and it's supposed to be wonderful. Not for me, it wasn't. It was horrible, because I was totally unprepared. I had no spiritual tradition. I had no teacher. I hadn't read any text, nothing. And moreover, as I said, I'd been a philosophy major, so I thought I was supposed to know something, and I found I knew zero. That was in terms of this reality, I mean. It was toward the end of my senior year, and in rebellion, I guess you'd say, I did not attend my graduation because I was so disgusted. I felt the whole Western tradition had betrayed me. You know, I spent all this time learning, and what did it amount to? Nothing in view of what I actually experienced. So then what I did was, after I received my diploma in the mail, I took it to the chancellor of the university, gave it back to him, and told him my education had been a waste of time. So he was astounded. I was really scared, I remember, but I did it. And then, you know, I will also admit that, like, a couple of weeks later, you know, common sense came in. I said, wait a minute. The diploma resides on his desk or wherever, but the degree is already in my record. So I went back and got the diploma 2 weeks later. Nonetheless, this shift that does occur happens differently for every person. I'm just told you my own experience, and I will say the shift is only the beginning of spiritual maturity. Believe me, it's not the full story. It's just the beginning, just the beginning. And everybody's experience is different. It's not going to be, when it happens for you, and I hope that it does, anything like what I said. Not because the circumstances are different, but because it will be immediate. Everything I'm saying, you have to hear only as words. If you read about it, you hear anyone else talk about it, all of it is words. It's only when you understand directly for yourself that it's happened. And once it does happen, you can't erase it. It's there. It is there forever. You just, no matter, you can forget it. I certainly did. As I said, it happened when I was so young. I had no teacher. I knew what had happened, but I didn't know what had happened. And it was really bad. I won't go into my life story. But I spent years trying to attain what I already knew. I mean, talk about confusion. You know, it was just confusion. It'll happen, hopefully, for you in a much simpler and a much more joyful way. Who knows? But I do hope it happens. So I'd like to just say a few words right now about, well, first of all, I will say, trust it. If it happens for you, no one told me that. If it ever happens for you, trust that you know something. It's so easy to feel intimidated or overwhelmed and like, who, me? How could I know anything? If it happens, trust it. Because it's not you anymore. It's way bigger than you. It's not about you. So just trust it. So I thought really quickly I would talk about some of the effects of this shift. And as I said, it's the beginning, not the end of anything. The relief, finally, when you really know, can be enormous because you're suddenly living from a bigger place. You're no longer locked into this sense of this little me who's trying so very hard and maybe have so many difficulties that you're facing and so many challenges. All of a sudden, you're living from there, yes, but also you're living from a different spot. You know that it's not the you that you thought you were. You recognize that everyone is in this together, even the people you can't stand. You're all in it together. And that means, as Gurudev was talking about, compassion begins to grow without even trying. It's just there because you see it from the inside. You see them from the inside. They're human beings just like you. You may not like them. There's no guarantee you're going to like everybody. Who does? And yet, the compassion and the kindness is there very naturally. You realize that there is no you. There's no self. There's not a self in the sense that you thought there was. This is a stunning recognition. It can be devastating. You've been suffering all this time, and you're not even there in the way you thought you were. Now, I know this is contradictory, but it's true. That's the way it happens. So there's a great little poem by actually he was Irish, but he was a Zen master, lived in the 20th century. Wei Wu Wei was his name. And he said, why are you unhappy? Because 99.9% of everything you think and everything you do is for yourself, and there isn't one. Oh, 99.9% of everything you say and everything you do is for yourself, and there isn't one. Now, let me be really clear. He's not saying that even you can be going out and doing wonderful service. It depends on how you're doing it, from the place that you're doing it. Are you doing it? And it's wonderful and important to do it as a me who's trying to improve. You've got to do that. You've got to go through the first stages. And then at some point, you realize, oh, there isn't that me there. So to realize that there's no me is shocking to the me. It's shocking to the ego. The ego doesn't like it one bit, and you can expect it to put up all kinds of fight. It's going to tell you how much you are suffering. And it needs attention, and it does need attention, but you're no longer the same. There is a difference that goes on, that goes. And when this does happen, I will also say you're not atomized, you're not evaporated, you don't live in emptiness, which in fact is a dreadful word that many people can't stand anyway. That's good news if you don't live in emptiness. But there's a spaciousness that comes in and a natural love that flows through it. And finally, when you get to that, if that stage happens, there's no longer a choice. I said you can get off the bus on the early stages, you can stop, you just stop what you're doing. You stop working at what you're doing. Now you can't, there's no getting off the bus. You're hooked at this later stage. That's it, you're hooked. And it's actually wonderful news. It's good news to hear that you're hooked at this point. And now dropping the metaphor of the bus ride, because here is a place of utter contradiction, and Gurudev is talking about it just in this clip right now. And that is, at this later stage, you begin to realize you've been there all along. You haven't gone anywhere. There's no place to go. And again, you live your life in every single bit of the concreteness, and even more so because you are freer to love. Your love can be pure and more passionate. You're not all clogged up, or not as much clogged up. It takes time. Believe me, I'm not claiming that I'm at the end of this ride. I am certainly not. Or even having gotten off, words kind of fail. But all of a sudden that you realize, wow, I've been here, nothing's changed, there's nowhere to go. So you've been there all along. The difference is that now you're living life with a clarity, whereas before there had been a blindness that you weren't even aware was blind. And you can't be aware until it's no longer, what did Jesus say? Scales fall from your eyes. They just do, or was that Paul? Whoever it was. Somebody said that. So 2 questions I thought I would ask you in closing, and that is, number 1, why did you, or have you already, or are you contemplating getting on the spiritual bus ride? Are you being pulled by suffering? Pushed by suffering, or pulled by this longing of the heart for something that you know is there? Maybe you call it the sacred. Which is true for you, or maybe both? Maybe both. I think a lot of it, for us, it's a mix. And secondly, what stage are you in on this bus ride? There's no problem. We all have to start at, I have a teacher who used to say, you have to be 3 before you can be 4. So we start, we start where we start. What stage are you in? And this is just for you to notice and to look inside to find out. So thank you very much for listening.
Thank you, Susan, for that insightful talk. I hope I can continue even though I'm not the self here. But